Top 10 reason number 3. Gold and silver should buy a whole lot more. There's an old myth that in ancient Rome an ounce of gold could clothe a man from head to toe with a toga, sandals, and a belt, and that today a man can still clothe himself in a suit, shoes, and belt for the price of an ounce of gold. People claim that this has always been the case. Nothing could be further from the truth. Before the Federal Reserve was created, you could buy an outfit with an ounce of gold, but by the end of the Roaring '20s, due to inflation, you couldn't. Then by the beginning of the Great Depression, because of deflation, you could, but by 1970, an ounce of gold would only buy the shoes. Then just 10 years later, it would buy a top-notch suit, very fine shoes, and a great belt, but by 2001 it could only buy a shoddy suit, cheap shoes, and a crummy belt. Yes, gold has always been worth something, but it has always zigzagged in a range of purchasing power. However, this myth is based on a true fact. Humans mine gold at about the same rate that they make babies, so there is relatively the same amount of gold per person on the planet today as there was in ancient Rome. So let's dissect the myth of the Roman suit to see why gold's purchasing power has varied and what it could be in the future. The gains in efficiencies made since ancient Rome are mind-boggling. To make a toga required cotton to be planted, tended, picked, and separated from the seed by hand. Then the cotton had to be hand-washed, combed, and spun, taking someone weeks to make enough thread for a toga. Then the thread was dyed with colors that were hand-mined or harvested. The cloth was then hand-woven, cut, and stitched into a toga. The shoes and belt were equally labor-intensive. Today, with factory farming, cheap fuel, modern irrigation, and pesticides, it's possible to tend thousands of acres planted at densities never before imagined. Giant combines drive through the fields, plowing the dirt and sowing the seeds in one pass. At harvest time, specialized combines pick the cotton and other machines separate the seed. With factory ranching, efficiency is the same story, with thousands of sheep being tended and shorn in production line fashion. Then trucks deliver the cotton or wool to where it's washed, combed, and spun into miles of thread in minutes, then dyed with cheap mass-production dyes and woven into miles of cloth by machines, again in minutes. Then the cloth is stacked many layers thick, and a computer-guided shear cuts out dozens of each of the parts of the suit in a single pass. The parts go to an assembly plant where workers who specialize in making the left sleeve or the right leg and such do so at amazing speed. Workers that can turn out dozens of suits per day do the final assembly also at a blazing rate. Then it's shipped to a store where you can pick from dozens or even hundreds of styles, colors, and sizes. And it's a similar story at the shoe factory that spits out a pair of shoes every few seconds and the belts that come off the production line by the thousands. The end result is that the time value of the Roman outfit most likely measures in months of human labor, whereas the modern suit contains only a few hours. This is true of all the other stuff in society as well. When it comes to the time value contained in stuff, everything today is on sale for a tiny, minuscule fraction of what it once cost. And as proof to support my thesis, I offer this. Today, a good percentage of the world's population has maybe 100 times more stuff than 99% had 2,000 years ago. Think about it. You are surrounded with furniture, cell phones, computers, TVs, refrigerators, grocery stores, cars, planes, hotels, restaurants, a great bed to sleep in at night, and just about anything else you want. By contrast, 2,000 years ago, with the exception of the ruling class, most people made a subsistence living barely able to afford the things they needed to survive. In many cases, a great bed or a pair of shoes were extravagances they would not experience in their lifetimes. So if this is true, and it is, then why is gold's purchasing power so low? If there's so much more stuff per person, but the same amount of gold per person, shouldn't an ounce of gold buy many, many, many times more stuff than it does today? Absolutely, emphatically, yes, it should. Then why doesn't it? Because of the other big factor in busting this myth. In ancient Rome, if you wanted to save some of your wealth for the future, there was only one asset available for you to save your purchasing power in: real money, the gold and silver coins that made up their money supply. Today, if you want to save some of your wealth for the future, you do so with financial assets such as stocks and bonds, and maybe a tiny portion of currency in a checking account. These highly liquid assets actually compete with gold and silver as a place to store your wealth. They all dilute each other's purchasing power. In ancient Rome, there was only one place to store your wealth. Today, there are thousands. So that's the answer. With technology, machinery, and super cheap energy, we've become 1,000 times more efficient at producing stuff, and at the same time, we've created 1,000 times more ways to store our wealth. The gains in purchasing power that gold should have made, due to man becoming so much more efficient at making stuff, have been almost exactly offset by the proliferation of alternative liquid financial assets in which to store that wealth. If it weren't for all those competing currencies and alternative financial assets, gold would buy many, many times more stuff. So what happens to those alternate financial assets in the inevitable market crash that lies out there in the future? Those trusted financial assets suddenly become hocus-pocus voodoo financial assets as their value evaporates, just like those AAA-rated mortgage-backed securities did in the crash of 2008. What happens to fiat currencies in the coming currency crisis? All those currencies become hot potatoes that nobody wants, causing hard assets, like gold and silver, to be bid up to the moon. Either way, gold will buy a whole lot more stuff someday in the near future. Today, there is about $40,000 worth of liquid financial assets per person versus only $200 worth of investment-grade gold. That's a 200-to-1 ratio. That means that in a crisis, if just 10% of the wealth invested in those alternative financial assets were to come chasing gold, its price would rise 20-fold. The moral of this story is, if you want to buy 20 suits, shoes, and belts a few years from now, buy an ounce of gold today. Taken separately, any one of these reasons is a compelling case for gold and silver. But if you look at them all together, and you take into account that for the very first time this gold and silver rush is going to be global, you realize that these reasons aren't just additive, but they multiply upon one another. This is just one of the reasons why I buy gold and silver. Now I'd like to show you how to buy gold and silver. Before you buy an ounce of gold or silver for yourself, I want to send you a free copy of my book, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver. It tells you everything you need to know about owning gold and silver, including where to store it, the pitfalls to avoid, how this industry works, and which bullion products I buy for myself. I'm proud to say it's the best-selling book on precious metals investing of all time. I've just released a fully updated version, and it's yours absolutely free. All you have to do to get it is follow the link below and tell me where to send it. Enjoy the book, please share this video, and thanks for watching.